So first of all, thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us, Eric. I appreciate it. This is an opportunity to jump into your proposal to us in more depth and answer questions that our team has. And we intend to stay on after we meet with you just to hash through what we learned and make our final decision here about moving forward. But first, I just want to introduce folks around the table here, and maybe David, we should start with you. I know you're on. There you go.
Well, I'm David Wicks, and just to let you know, I am recording this, as other people might know, so be careful what you say. But I work with the Ohio Riverway and based here in Louisville, and with the River City Paddle Sports, we have a facility in downtown Louisville, and also very active with another group called Payne Hollow on the Ohio, and been involved with the Ohio Riverway for a long time. I'm excited about this opportunity.
So let's go to Katie Sparks. Let's go to Katie Sparks. Upper right hand for me. You're on. Oh, Katie, you can't talk. Is that right? I'm sorry. So just so you know, Eric, Katie Sparks is the marketing director for Friendship State Bank in Southeast Indiana, the number of branches from Lawrenceburg to Madison. And she's been wonderful. She's on our marketing team, which is headed by Wayne Gates. Wayne, say hello.
Good morning. Wayne Gates. I'm the village administrator in Ripley, Ohio. Been doing the job here for about a year and a half. Prior to that, I have a lifelong media career, which includes about 10 years in print. So they've asked me to sort of share some of that background and try to move this project down the road with that area of expertise and endeavor.
So Eric, Wayne has graciously agreed to be our key point person for editing our copy to you, so that he will work closely with your team, I'm sure, as we work through this project. So let's keep moving forward. Susan Griffin Ward with Kentucky Waterways Alliance. How you doing? Thank you.
I'm good. Thank you for including me. As Brewster said, I'm Susan, and I work for Kentucky Waterways Alliance. We're a nonprofit that has our home office in Louisville, but we work across the state to restore, celebrate, and protect our 90,000 miles of waterways, one of which is the Ohio River. And so, and personally, I just love the Ohio River. I had the opportunity to participate in the Ohio Riverway paddle last year, and grateful for this opportunity.
Great. So let's jump here to Annette. Thank you, Annette.
She just said she had to step away, Bruce.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. And Mary Allen is here. Mary, introduce yourself, please. You're on mute. Sorry, Mary. I'm sorry.
Mary Allen, Village of New Richmond Council, and board member for Ohio.
And Mary is on our tourism team. Great to have you, Mary. And Rick Jansen is with us from Ironton. Rick.
Okay. I wear a lot of hats. Work for the Lawrence South Southwest District. Very passionate about getting our waterways cleaned up, and really want to be heavily involved in marketing and promoting this area. I think it has a great opportunity to provide a lot of economic opportunities for an area that kind of has had a downturn.
Good. Thanks, Rick. And Jerry Schulte. Thank you, Jerry.
Good morning, all. Jerry Schulte. I'm the safety director for the Ohio Riverway, and also do some media work for it as well. So I am. Thank you for having me here this morning, Brewster. Looking forward to it.
Well, we're looking forward to having you help us out here. And Annette, if she may or may not be able to speak right now, but Annette is the communications and marketing director for Orsanco, which, as you know, Rick. Eric is based in Cincinnati, in California section of Cincinnati, and they represent all the states that have water flowing into the Ohio and manage the water quality monitoring and enforcement, and they're a great partner with us. Oh, there she is. Hey, Annette. Okay. And so she has a lot of background in marketing and communications, and so we're glad she's on our team. We have a couple of other folks who hopefully will still be joining us. Julie Kirkpatrick, who you know, Eric, I think she runs Meet NKY and is very enthusiastic about this project. And then Noelle from Destination Marketing Corporation of Indiana. She's their sports marketing director for the state, and she's also with our tourism council or tourism committee. So I'm sorry, she may be joining us shortly. So Eric, everybody has received a copy of your proposal, and if you could just summarize what you are offering to do for us and how it would work. I'm sure we have some questions that we can pose to you. We've been talking about this project, and we're enthusiastic though about it. So thank you.
Wonderful.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, wonderful, and thank you for such an opportunity to be in participation with all of you. It just gets me excited, Brewster, to see how many people that are just in this meeting, let alone I've seen the membership list and the different events that you all have had. And I yes, am very excited because for our history and editorial content and our coverage through our different magazines, which I'll share a little bit more about, we've always felt that there is this unique value that the Ohio River and its surrounding areas provides. And it, I don't think yet has the voice that I can see of what you are building with the Ohio River Way. And as a community-based media company, one of the things that gets us excited is to, be a participant in affording our audiences and other audiences know more about quality organizations and missions like yourself. A little bit more about me. I had joined in publishing about 20 years ago, and my family was out of Northeast Ohio and has several different magazines across Ohio. Cleveland Magazine started in the later 60s. Ohio Magazine was an acquisition by the company in the 90s out of Columbus. And so I had joined and then moved to Cincinnati soon thereafterwards to try to assist growing the company. And probably soon thereafterwards created a separate media company in partnership with that original family-based company. But we do know travel, and through that previous company has Ohio Magazine, and to the point where I think in 1 year, I think they said we were doing as many as 40 different travel entity publications in a given year, including the state of Ohio's. But I know my father had been a participant at various different state panels in the past when, every 4 to 8 years, someone comes knocking, looking to reduce travel budgets and trying to not make that be something of interest in terms of where the dollars go. And so we've always been a shared participant in those efforts to make sure that people can appreciate just how dynamic travel is, and either locally or overnight stays to our economy. So I have a business called Main Street United Media Companies, and under that umbrella is our primary original publication in Cincinnati, Cincy Magazine. And then we also have Northern Kentucky Magazine, Dayton Magazine, Ohio Business Magazine, and we're launching from a digital platform originally, Midwestern Traveler Magazine. And so for us, we have a community-based media company that has these magazines. Within our footprint, we have a very large digital distribution of content and audience. And then we do a lot of events. So just last week, we had something on the east side of Cincinnati that covers Claremont County. and the east part. Next week, we'll have an event downtown Cincinnati. So within our brands, we have various different consumer events and business-to-business events. I don't know if I mentioned Ohio Business Magazine, but that's another entity of ours that we have across the state of Ohio that's primarily with print and events on the business-to-business side. But custom publishing outside of the magazines and our digital content has become a really big thing for magazine companies to be able to take what we do and what we feel we're good at, to share that opportunity with other organizations and have these win-win relationships. So ourselves, the company based out of Cincinnati, we do 20 or so a year, working with either travel bureaus, chambers of commerce, cities, sometimes corporate or nonprofit entities to be able to do these things. And much of what you see in your proposal is pretty similar to what we offer. We do several where some just pay us directly for the publications, but what I think where we offer our greatest value outside of distribution packaging with our publications is, our team of assets, and selling advertising to defray costs is a big opportunity, I think, for us and the organization. And so when I look at what's happening with your organization, just sort of learning about it through Brewster, I can validate the need is there. And usually if there's need, there's advertising dollars too, right? So evidently those two go hand in hand. And so, yeah, we're quite excited at the opportunity to be able to create this effort that is owned by you as an organization. We are your service provider. And so we can talk through, perhaps based on your questions, about what that is in terms of offerings. But I'm really excited because I feel like we have the ability to create something that really can give you the organization a great opportunity to share their narrative with others. And we will be able to distribute that product in various different print or digital as best you all see the need.
Okay, well, let's, Eric, let's open this up. As I say, everybody's received a copy of the proposal. I know that in our discussions there are questions ranging from that window of exclusivity when you would sell ads, and when therefore we cannot do, and we cannot compete with your effort to sell ads. And the question is, what does that mean? We can talk about that. We can talk about the process of deciding what the content is, and then also what the cost would be based, I guess, on the size of the publication, whether it's 16, 24, 30, or 40 pages. What would be the cost per unit of overruns? Because we understand that from the proposal, we would get about 2,500 extra copies for our distribution, but we all feel we would need a whole lot more. So part of the challenge is how much it would cost us to get more. Those are some of the questions that we have.
Yeah. So I can definitely go at each of them individually. One structured piece that I tend to start with when looking at the X's and O's of getting something done is just taking a look at the major parts of producing a publication. And I'll give you guys a little backdrop behind that. Originally, it's getting the proposal done and making sure everything looks good from both organizations. But originally, your focus is on advertising, because this is built upon it originally being at no cost to the organization with the distribution that we have in place. And so advertising is what you'll find where I spend most of my time engaging with the organization directly, along with our other publishers, to ensure that we can accomplish this mission of ad revenues and our goals so as we can fulfill the distribution of that product as per the original effort. But outside of advertising, what I do know is that the most interest lies outside of that. And so when you're looking at the other pieces, editorial tends to be the greatest part of people's interests to ensure that this product meets what we're all looking for it to achieve. Production has a major part of how this gets done, and to me, editorially, obviously the editors that produce our magazines participate and run this as an entity. Just the big thing to remember always is the organization owns the publication and all content. We provide services, but you have all the decisions on all things, okay? Including outside of editorial on the production scheduling. So one thing that I personally believe is in reference to production is that we as magazine companies, I think, tend to be good at creating quality production scheduling so as it meets our need, but obviously meets you all as a client's need, right? So we have to build a production schedule based on your feedback and input that ensures that it works effectively. And that usually means a schedule that gets bounced and, we get feedback, but then we'll generally have 2 or 3 different copies of the publication and iterations to ensure coming to final press mode. But I think that's one thing that I'd share that evidently from value proposition is that city regional magazine companies tend to be really good at this, whereas perhaps others who aren't doing it on a daily basis may not appreciate how long it takes, but how much communication it takes, right, to make these things work when it's a client-driven publication. But outside of editorial and production and advertising, you also have distribution. And so distribution is a key piece of clarity that I'm, again, happy to answer questions on. But one that was brought up was, hey, how much is it going to cost if we look at getting more than that original 2,500 copies, more than the 10,000 or so that polybag with our different magazines, Midwestern Traveler, Cincy Magazine, Dayton Magazine, Ohio Business Magazine. So I'll jump into that just a little later here in terms of answering your question. But the last thing, that we also talk about is design. And that's a major factor in presenting something of content like this, is to ensure that it's not an afterthought. Because, with something like this, we want it to mirror all the energies that is taking place of the mission of the organization. So we want it to be upscale, but we also want it to fit according to what you all would like to see happen. So let's get at specific questions. So the first one I throw you is, you mentioned, Brewster, about ad sales and not competing with the organization in terms of this. Let me spell out what that means to us. A lot of times what happens with chambers of commerce is that chambers have annual sponsorship, event sponsorships. They have other, publications, digital media, et cetera, things that they do to accomplish their mission. And what we say is, hey, for your question about membership, Brewster, that's ongoing. So we shouldn't stop that, of course, in terms of growing the organization. What we look at is like-oriented advertising products that are specifically geared towards getting the organization that is advertising exposure to say, hey, as long as when we're in our selling period, which we might say is 45, perhaps even 60 days, let's try not to have competing advertising products, so as it's not about, we want to maximize the revenues for the organization on that end, but we just don't want people to not know what we're doing versus something else and them getting, so we find sometimes those things can get confused. So we don't want to limit membership solicitation at all, but also just in reference to anything dealing with advertising, we just say, hey, when we communicate our production schedule and it all works for you all, could you not solicit during this period, just to afford us not having competing entities that people are thinking, you know, we've had people support us thinking it was one thing and realizing, let's just try to do that. So we put that in there as a request, knowing there are limitations to that request based on things that are already underway. We reference to solicitation, recognize we are ambassadors of the organization. And so also something that I personally feel like is a really important thing that we communicate to all those looking to get involved is this is not a reference to advertising. Yes, it's in support of the mission, but it is much more in support of getting the organization that's advertising exposure. If someone wants to support the organization, they need to do it in other ways, right? And so we have to be clear and upfront about what is that offering in reference to advertising. Most of those that are part of this group know the difference and know what that is. But I just thought that I'd share that. To me, I personally feel like advertising is just a really wonderful way to communicate to your membership, but having a clear and concise message that has them understand that we are not members of the organization. We're a media outlet that they're choosing to do an advertising effort within this publication. Does that answer questions in reference to the conflict of what we put in there in terms of advertising solicitations?
Well, I think so, but maybe somebody else can speak to this as well. But one of the things that we do annually is a paddle 10 days from Portsmouth to Louisville, and we'll do that the first week in June. And in the past, and our intent currently is to solicit entities to be sponsors of that trip, for which they will get visibility on our shirt, on our marketing material for the trip, banners, that kind of thing. The question that I don't know the answer to is to what extent would those entities that we would solicit be also on the list of entities to solicit for advertising in this publication. They may, like Duke Energy is probably not going to buy an ad. I don't know, but maybe we go after them for a sponsorship, or Friendship State Bank. That may be a situation where, yeah, frankly, the bank may want to have an ad in this publication, but also want to be a sponsor. So maybe we have to work out the time frame for soliciting sponsorships, which frankly is like right now is when we're in the solicitation mode for sponsorships or getting ready to. And it sounds like the ad sale time frame would be later this spring. So that would be helpful if we can work with you, if you can give us a sense of when do you see that 45 to 60 day block for you to solicit ads, and then we can back up and see, does that leave us time to go after certain entities to be sponsors of this paddle?
You know, to follow up on Brewster's comment about the trip, I organized this 10-day trip, and one of our goals is we'll have 10 dinners at 10 different restaurants in 10 different river towns. And so will those restaurants be a sponsor? Will a local chamber of commerce be a sponsor hosting that restaurant? So there is, you know, and I think Brewster hit the nail on the head, is what is the time frame? And hopefully we're going to start soliciting people tomorrow at our 10 o'clock call. And we said right now, Derby Day, but you know, that can change. And but it's just support. And it is to support the canoe adventure, but all the extra profit and overhead beyond what our expenses are go directly to the Ohio Riverway.
Yeah. My guess is that we would not be underway with advertising solicitation until probably the first week of March, just being where we're at, almost, you know, midway through January. And the other thing I'd say is I'm much less concerned with that mission ask, because it is uniquely different than a print ask. What often happens where I, will say, hey, this is where I have to define exactly for the team is usually two unique traditional advertising options. Could be a monthly versus a annual, could be a digital solicitation to get exposure versus print. Because this is a mission-based solicitation, I don't foresee us being too challenged with that, but I'm happy to define those based on production schedule. So as you all know what we're suggesting as a sales schedule.
Okay, I see a question from Annette. Are you able to speak, Annette, and share your question? You're on mute.
Hi, yeah, I'm able to speak. Thank you. I was just wondering, at the end of the contract, there's a statement about this being a 3-year period. So will there be multiple selling schedules that we would be aware of, or will they always be in the beginning of March?
Traditionally, why we put that in there is because for everyone's effort involved, be it individuals that are participating in editorial, design, or our team, we often see the first publication as being sort of the way that sort of gets everybody on the same page. A lot of times on the advertising side, people will wait it out just to sort of see what it is, And so why we have found the value there is that we say, hey, maybe it isn't the next year because there's not enough reason to do it annually versus every other year, but it affords a lot of the same team members to be able to participate. Most likely, yes, that the definition of sales schedule, once success hits, you'd say, well, if we did it and it worked in March in terms of how we solicited everybody, why wouldn't you then choose to do it in the same time frame the following time? Helps in our scheduling as a business. But yeah, so happy to define that, but usually because there's always an out, right? if this isn't in satisfaction, then you're just not going to pursue the following publication. But if it be an example like Adams County, I've led that project for I think now 15 years in Ohio, and it comes with an every 2 or 3 year renewal, but it is always driven towards, hey, did this work for all parties? But that's why we throw it in there.
So Eric, Tom Cross there spoke very highly of you in a message back to me. Do you do that? Great. Is that done annually?
Correct. Most convention and visitor bureau travel-based publications are done annually. Sure. And usually because that comes with communication about a schedule of concepts of events that changes year over year.
Okay. By the way, we are joined now by Julie and Noel. Could you guys introduce yourselves briefly? I think you may know Eric. Julie?
Hey there, Eric. It's Julie Kirkpatrick, president of Media NKY.
Great. Thank you. And Noel?
Hi, this is Noelle Sidlick. I'm with the Indiana Destination Development Corporation. We're the state agency that oversees tourism in Indiana.
Thank you, Noelle. Appreciate both of you guys be joining us. I'm sorry we're so Eric, can you address obviously we want this piece to be done so it comes out at the start of the recreation season. So if you can you lay out what the production table will needs to be in order for us to have a publication by the end of May at the latest?
Yeah, so that's doable to start off in terms of if we have our understanding in terms of execution by the end of January, getting something done by the end of May is definitely feasible. What generally happens in terms of how this plays through is that advertising is usually the lead of getting things underway, just because the amount of time of wanting to make sure we have enough selling time to hit all those interested. But Generally the first week of February, if we're doing something by the end of January, or the second week at the latest, you want to have a production meeting where you talk about those 5 entities, okay, in terms of your advertising, your editorial, your production, your distribution, and your design. That is orchestrated by our team with all those that are participating from your organization. And at that meeting, we lay out a production schedule as here's round A that we know you all are going to give us feedback on that says you like this or you want to tweak this. There are multiple, as we discussed, having rounds of revisions that afford committee-based organizations to be able to give their feedback. So we would, on this occasion, I'm really bullish on this concept based on, of course, knowing all those that are involved here. So most of the times what we do is we put out advertising for like 60 days. We don't do any production work if we're to say do something by September. So as we sort of figure out where we're at with advertising first, right? And then it's like, well, if things got much bigger than we expected, here's how we play it out, et cetera, et cetera. So we will always lead with advertising in terms of timing first, but I'm definitely comfortable as we've gotten a proposal committing to what we have in place, just because I believe this beyond the business end satisfies a real need for our audiences. And so the excitement of what is just the journalistic mission of this to me is something that we're definitely going to support. But we'll discuss in that meeting advertising, but primarily it's going to be of the other 4 entities to ensure we get that done. So the month of February is mostly advertising driven in terms of real work, but by the end of the month, you'll have what we call an editorial slug list derived from that original meeting that is presented to you as a client that says, hey, this is what you all gave us as feedback. And what we're going to do is build in different iterations in case the publication does grow, right? Because we say is a minimum it's at 16, but if it's a 24, it's a 32, if it's a 48, and they traditionally go in 8-page increments in terms of our web-based printing platforms. But we'll build that in so as you all see what is the A priority versus additional opportunities in terms of pages. So that's not a second meeting, that's already built into that original production. So you're in production by the end of February through March in terms of getting content. Now, we have folks here that I know are as part of previous media. And the thing I would say there is we build in the mission that we're supposed to do photography and design and editorial or writing. However, whatever the organization wants to produce for themselves is totally a-okay. Of course, it's easier, as you all know, as editors to be provided information than have to originate all content, right? But a lot of times photography, for instance, becomes a little easier because the organization has a library of resources that we lean on to be able to ensure that we get, the things that you all like from the start. But we'll go in with that original meeting assuming we're doing everything. And the way I've seen that is that usually works in committee format because sometimes, hey, somebody jumps in. Tom is an excellent example with Adams County. Tom writes almost all of his publication. It's fascinated us just because that partnership has been just really wonderful on multiple reasons. But one of them for our editors is that he really enjoys doing all that content. And that's just fine because we know he knows about Adams County and he's going to do a great job. So that's derived in our understanding of who's to do what in that original production meeting. So the month of March is primarily dedicating out who's to do what. And then by the end of the month, you'll be getting first review of content. And what traditionally happens in a publication like this is you're going to review the content, not in layout, not in design layout pages. You're just going to review the stories to make sure that they all meet your expectations. You're going to review the photographs, unique, and captions, all those kinds of things. In that time, we'll also start, the design side starts, in my view, I often like starting with the cover. The cover is what everybody wants to really work on and wants to look at. And it is exciting to launch something like this and get people's feedback. So design starts earlier for cover than the rest of the pages. And then in the production schedule is a round 1, round 2, round 3 final version, which is implementing the layout and design. So that happens basically through the month of April, because you have to have enough time of iteration 1 changes, iteration 2 changes, final version 3, then client sign off. So you will, if you're looking for an end of May publication, the appropriate thing would be to try to create a schedule that says the first week of May is going to press. And press has been, we actually use LSC there just in Bardstown. And it's been a challenge because the timing, even compared to a year ago, is when you have to, from final send out of the first week of May, you have to leave at least 2 weeks now for expectation of delivery. And then, of course, in that schedule, copies are delivered to the organization as per what we prescribe, as per number per box, all those things that we designate. And we can even hold some at either LSC or our offices if it be of need. And then, of course, we execute on however the magazines are distributed through the timing as per either when our magazines go out, let's say it's Cincy or the Western Traveler or Ohio Business, those would be tagged according to their schedules. But if you have, say, freebie rack, CBS distribution, those are something that we orchestrate in the different markets. The good thing with freebie racks is, yes, it's an expense that we take on as a burden, but its execution is something you don't have to worry about. It's a paid vendor relationship, and you can specifically look at target markets that you're looking to get the effort out to. So I've always enjoyed utilizing those freebie racks, which again traditionally are your Walgreens, your CVS. No longer is it Kroger because they pulled those out.
Can we pick the locations where that freebie rack distribution takes place?
Very much. And what I will do is in either communication or the production meeting where we define what that is, I'm always going to speak on the benefit of those that are advertisers. So I'm the ambassador to the organization, but I'm also their ambassador too, because I'm going to be asking them in these conversations, where do you want this distributed? Because it's always really good to learn. So your first year, I would encourage you to also be welcome to feedback based on where your advertisers, because then they'll tell you, hey, and it's surprising because to each entity and mission unique, because if someone says, well, I don't want it in my own backyard, that's not what my organizations pay us for, is to get bed nights, so it has to be at least, an hour away or whatever the case. So that's something, but yeah, you will define, it is your choice of what markets you choose. And we define it by, us getting clarity on, let's say it is an additional 10,000 copies that you would like to have rather than the original 2,500 distributed to you. But you want those to be through the Walgreens, CVS, whatever. So yes, we can price those out, and that was a point for me to still get clarity with the organization, just because if you're to say, no, you wanted 100,000, that's a big difference of quote from our printer. But I'm happy, to email back and forth, or to get, Brewster, your feedback of what you would like, because then I can come back to you to say, hey, okay, we could give a 10,000, 25,000, 50,000, whatever the case may be. I'm always happy to be transparent in that. There's no interest on our end as a publisher really to be the middleman, other than just communicate to you, here's exactly what our printer is telling you. There's no margin to be made there, is my point.
Okay, let me open up to anybody else. Susan.
Hi, I have a couple of questions about the online flip book and how that works. So I see that it's going to be hosted on a couple of 3 websites. How long will it be hosted there? And if there are other organizations that want to host it, is that an option? For example, if we wanted to put it on our Kentucky Waterways Alliance website for folks, is that a possibility? And could we email it to people, or do they need to be subscribers to the print company, to your company?
Yeah, wonderful. I love when people ask questions that is like stuff that is within what I know is going to only be a benefit to the organization and the advertisers. And for sure, yes, that is, the flip book is meant to be overly shared, and any organization that was interested to have it loaded up on their websites, social media, it's encouraged, because that only is going to give it more views. And one of the things that I found surprises sometimes organizations, when you think of digital audiences, obviously there's major players involved in terms of points of distribution of media outlets, but community-based media companies over the last 5 years have really grown in our appreciation of the digital reach versus the print reach, in that we feel very strongly about our print, and we do see great value in that distribution. However, our digital audience is one that you can repeatedly, just as the organization, can load it up on the website that stays throughout the year, but then repeatedly input it into email content. So community-based media companies are really good with email because it's our audience that is subscribers that traditionally opts into our emails. And so on any given week, we're sending over 1 million emails, unique emails within those brands that we have. And so it can be a great way to position the product. And of course, on our end, Midwestern Traveler has been a digital platform for us for 5+ years without having a print entity. It's a very strong audience, primarily in the markets that we serve in terms of greater Cincinnati, Dayton, and across Ohio and into Northern Kentucky. But that most likely sees us pushing a much stronger lever now in terms of audience increase based on us launching in print, coincidingly with this project. So we're going to be jumping in to opening our email audiences throughout some of the markets that are close to us, Indianapolis, Columbus, Louisville, with a Midwestern Traveler product for the following year, which will afford us to continue to get that exposure with this product as well.
Okay, Eric, in the interest of time here, we want to leave a little bit of time for us after you leave to have a follow-up discussion, but let me ask about other questions. David.
Yeah, I am once again fascinated. I'm just interested in content. You know, we are a group of storytellers, and we could probably have 50 stories. Do you have a gut reaction of how many different stories would fit into a 16-page piece with advertising?
Yeah, no, that's also, I agree. with you wholeheartedly that there is a lot of stories to be told. And frankly, every good story is your story, right? Because that's the mission of each of these organizations, is to tell that story versus someone else. And so, you know, the thing that I would say is that we start with the shell, that is the 16 page, and that is a discussion on your end and looking at the 24, the 32, the greater page increments at least 60% editorial. And so we talk about pure edit in our magazines within the city magazines, but we mean it so much as much. And the custom is that we want at least 60% of all pages to be editorial. And that defines for you that, hey, you're guaranteed with the 16, you get this much, with the 32, you get this much. So, you know, the participation, I think that's going to be coming from your organization of what things you feel best suited to reach. And I think it starts with defining what is your highest priority for your 16 versus your 32, to say, well, how many individual stories versus collaborative stories do you do? And that's going to be something that we'll be happy to provide value to as well, in terms of, if you have 10 pages of content, here are some things that, you know, you might say are sort of the mandates, right? And we'll give you that feedback, you know, based on you make the choice as you see fit. So we're a participant in that. It's not just, hey, well, here's the stories we want to do. I'm going to tell you this based on hopefully my experience. And again, I say, well, if I've told you and you guys take a different direction, fine. But I want, just in terms of the projects that I've worked on with various custom projects, what my whole intent is, in a way, is to create this annual platform, both print and digital, to serve the reader just like a magazine would. So it's not an annual report. See, I'm already giving you my feedback in terms of what it can accomplish, right? So if somebody picked this up at CBS and Louisville and said, oh, that's pretty cool, just like Brewster's publication, that Brewster got us started in this, in reference to content in Cincinnati, I felt it was as much as City Magazine. So I'll give you our feedback about the things that you all cover. But I would say it's just based on priority, based on page count. The more pages of advertising will deem you to be able to get more.
Great. I know Wayne Gates has a question.
Okay, Eric, the question that I have is, first of all, if you have something on the shelf that you have done with other publications that we can pull off and use as content, I think that is, I'm assuming that is something that you would be able to do for us. And then the second question I have is, if we create something, in our internal discussions, we've talked about two things. We have a couple of high priorities. Number one is introducing the Ohio Riverway to the general public as an organization and the advocacy that is behind it. And the second is, hey, the Ohio River is cleaner than you think it is. So if we have those two ideas in content that is already created, is it possible that you could put that content in other print that you do for Northern Kentucky or for Indiana or places like that, that we could continue to all get a regional benefit out of it?
Very much. As a part of the proposal, we include a limited participation on marketing, but very much is it a great learning opportunity for us in Midwestern Traveler. But yes, Cincy, Dayton, other products, to be able to editorially then cover the organizations moving forward. And this may not be for this meeting, but I probably want to dive further into appreciating the advocacy part, in terms of how do I assist giving you clarity for the reader's perspective of, okay, I'm interested in Ohio Riverway. How do I get involved?
Right.
Is it financially? Is it time, energy? That's more probably in our editorial meeting, but those are two very strong things that are very appropriate from the original publication and expanded coverage. And I think that, you know, my 2 cents would be is to, you know, to make it drill down to, you know, if it is about advocacy, making sure that that point is clear, just like a billboard. Don't beat around the bush.
Good. Hey, Eric, I
Know what it is.
really appreciate you taking this time. We wanted to leave a little bit of time before 11 o'clock to have some discussion amongst ourselves. Is there anybody who has a question that's critical while Eric is available right now that we haven't addressed? Okay. Well, Eric, thank you. We really appreciate the proposal, and we love the effort here, and we want to make it happen. And we'll just we're going to continue to discuss and get back to you promptly about how we move forward on this, assuming we make the decision to do so. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. Bye-bye. Okay. I'm sorry. He kind of talks a bit, so he's worse than me. So what do y'all think?
I don't think I don't see any reason not to move forward. I mean, it's no money out of pocket. It's an initial foray into what they can do for us. They have other content that is aimed in other markets at other demographic groups that we would benefit from. So I don't see any reason not to move forward.
Thanks, Wayne, and thanks again for stepping up to the plate and offering your services here and leadership. Annette.
Just one thing to consider. I was going to ask at the very end, but I just didn't know if timing was appropriate. And, you know, this may be obvious to everyone else, but I'd like to know, when we give these suggested prospects for them to contact for ads, you know, ad space, what are they going to say? Like, how do they handle that? And what is like the jump off point they start with? You know, if I'm going to suggest people for them to contact, I just kind of wanted to learn or hear a little bit more about how they handle that process.
Yeah, I mean, my gut says that we work with them in developing the messaging. And in fact, I've talked about this. In other words, we would help write what is it that this publication is. I'm sorry. What the benefits are, what we're trying to accomplish, and so that what they communicate is actually written by us, amended by them to meet their needs. I guess, right? Makes sense.
That would be important to clarify with them. I think that's great. And then the other question I had is the solicitor restriction that you talked about with him. Would that just include Ohio River Way, or would it somehow branch out into all the individual entities involved?
No, I can't imagine they would do that. But that's something we should clarify in the first meeting with them. I mean, I understand what their concerns are, and it's good to hear that they don't see us soliciting sponsors as membership. Number one, that's not an issue. Number two, sponsors for this annual event that we do, which is not trying to get print advertising that's a direct head-to-head competition with their sales effort. So it doesn't strike me we have a problem here. I could be wrong. Mary.
I agreed with Wayne, and I had the same question that Annette had around like the individual communities, but the agreement is with ORW. So I think we should clarify, but I think you're right. It would seem to me that it would just be with ORW, but it seems like a great opportunity.
Cool. Hey, Noelle, I appreciate you sticking with us, and I'm not sure if you can hear us, but just wanted to see from your perspective statewide in Indiana, if you have any feedback for us or words of caution based on all of your experience doing this professionally.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I think the only concern or thought I have, which I just wasn't in a situation where I could pop in and ask a question, but just what's the expectation, and maybe he covered this and I just on us in regards to, I know they're going to do the ad selling, but what if we don't meet the 40% threshold? Like, what happens there? Is there an expectation that everybody that participates with the Ohio River Way is going to buy an ad? Like, that's we get into this a lot with travel guide things we do, you know. Are we internally going to set up parameters for, like, if you buy ads, then you'll be included in the editorial. If you don't buy ads, you won't be, you know, things like that.
Interesting.
Because I don't know if that's fair, but I'm just saying that sometimes is where you get into giving people priority. Generally, your ad buyers are the people that get priority in your editorial content. The other thing that I just want to make sure for this group is I'm with Annette on just making sure we understand if we're being asked to give them people to reach out to, are they going to ask? I mean, are we making that initial contact to say, hey, you might be contacted by these folks about this publication? We think it's a great opportunity for you to participate, or are they going to be doing like cold calling?
Based on your experience, what do you recommend?
Well, I don't do ad sales,
Okay.
but I would say we definitely want to be able to give people a heads up.
Absolutely.
So that
Absolutely.
they know, that this is something we're associated with, and that we support if we do. But I think it would also be nice to, and I don't know if they're required to provide this, but some kind of list as to who they're going to go after.
Well, what I believe they ask us for a list based on who we think would be
Right.
the first round of now they may have a list of people who say anytime you got a damn publication that you distribute around here, we want to be in it,
I gotcha.
which we're
Yeah.
open to, although within reason. I don't want gutter
Sure.
shutters ads to be in there.
Yeah, and I'm not worried about the conflict overlap like as much. That they, your questions were totally valid with the event and that kind of thing, but definitely because some of us have advertising sales that goes on all year round. It would be impossible to come up with a calendar that creates non-conflicting time periods.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead.
The last thing I had to have, and you guys that work on travel guides, I have one other question. Just the timeline seems really short to me. I think getting that really down on paper and solidified, like,
Yep.
because you said May, he said the end of May. That's 30 days. That's a big difference in dates. So,
Right.
and
Yes.
I definitely think the end of May might be more doable. The beginning of May, if that's what you're really thinking in regards to season, for people to be out on the water and outdoors, then we need to, just look at that timeline, because I definitely think, we generally have 6 months. I think we talked about this before, to put a
Right.
publication like this together. To do it in 2.5 or 3 feels really tight.
Yeah, but again, I hear what you're saying, and I guess what I heard your committee talk about is the idea of let's go for the 16. Let's not try to shoot for 40 like Adams County in our first year. Let's get it done and done in a timely way, so that ideally by Memorial Day, the start of the season, so to speak, it'll be available. We can use it in Louisville for the mayor's hike, bike, and paddle. We can use it for our paddle. In other words, I'm going to be driving my truck from Portsmouth to Louisville, following the paddle. And I'll be a mobile distribution operation to literally deliver these to every nook and cranny, well, to every entity along the way, both sides of the river. So, among other ways,
We would even take a couple in a waterproof bag in the canoe.
I know you would,
pass it out to people.
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful event, and I think quality over quantity, and I think do a bang up job on a 16-page deal. And I'm just like Noel and other folks. 2.5 months is a short period of time, especially if you want to get good quality. I think the editorial piece is going to be hard. Having all of us come to consensus on 4 or 5 pieces that are well written in 3 months, what a good thing for us. It gets our priorities in gear, what a good thing. But
yeah, it's a way to force us to think through what do we think. Well, what do we want to communicate to the consumer? It's not about to our members, or it's not an organizational thing. It's the general public that goes to a trade show, stops by a tourism office, is it some public event and they pick the thing up? What do we want the general public to know about, and maybe do? And so that's the challenge. And I think with Wayne's leadership as our point person for editorial content, we need to get going right away in trying to scope out. We could have 100 different things in there, but then how do we keep narrowing to the points, to the elements that we think are absolutely critical to be in this piece, and whatever we can add beyond that is fine. But I know that the tourism committee was thinking through, gee, maybe we ought to break the river up into the Ohio River Way into 3, maybe 4 sections, color coded in the booklet, and like what do you do and exciting about this from Ironton down to Ripley, and then from New Richmond down to wherever, and then different sections. And so because people are probably going to explore the Ohio River Way by section, not doing it all at the same time. That's one way to think through what are the key events, what are the key attractions or assets for recreation, et cetera. And then what are the little boxes we want to put in? Something about cycling, about paddling, about safety, about the quality of the Ohio River, little things. So anyway, I think the key comes to working with Wayne to narrow down quickly what our prioritized content needs to be.
I did enjoy those two goals you listed out, Wayne. I thought they were very comprehensive. I'd like to add a sense of adventure, local adventure, and maybe that goes hand in hand with the river is not a dangerous place.
Well, one thing I can do, Brewster, if you'll send me a distribution list of everybody that's in the meeting today, I can turn an email around, because right now I've got about 15 content umbrellas that I've written down through the meeting. So we're going to essentially have to prioritize what those are, and then see if we may be able to get to 24. It just kind of depends. And then it sounds like we've got a couple of months to curate content. So we'll have a lot more time to discuss this, but I do agree that we need to get the content umbrellas out there and come to a consensus on what our priorities are.
Excellent. So it sounds like our next step is to actually us continuing to work on that piece, which is absolutely critical. I'll send you that list. Number two, I set up a meeting with Eric for our production meeting, and we got to think through process-wise who all is going to be on this production team. I mean, it may be we just invite the folks we have currently with Julie added, and whoever can make it, fine. And obviously, Wayne, you're the quarterback in terms of content. Susan, it'd be great to have your engagement, and everybody else on this call, frankly. So does that make sense that we literally set the meeting up with him? It'll be a Zoom meeting, I assume. And then we just move ahead with a tight timetable and commit ourselves to be disciplined to actually meet it.
I have one more question for the group to think about, and that is how many extra copies we really want to buy. Above and beyond the distribution system that he talked about. Bike and paddle, which you mentioned, 12,000 people. Not everybody's going to take one. You go to the show, or the paddle event, or what would happen if we had it for every single Orsanco River Sweep event. You can get those numbers up very quickly. And we might want to start to think about a sponsor for extra copies. Having that figure, we can go with a lot, so
these could easily be a good question, David. These could easily be $1 or more per unit, even if it's only 16 pages, given it's slick paper, it's 4-color. I mean, Noelle, any advice on that? Or quantity?
I think it's just what you're talking about, David. It's just having people identify things and then obviously scale them back. They're never going to get rid of as many as you think, unless you're doing something like everybody that registers for the paddle gets a gift bag, and so in that registration packet is this publication. That's different. But the other option is just to have them available. But I think you just start with kind of getting an idea of where people think they could actually distribute them, and then work your way backwards.
I would like
to something that's manageable.
Rick?
I would like to see us include the boat RV dealers that are really hands-on day-to-day with our potential and existing customers. They get some buy-in, they get some value as the retailer, as well as a partnership that, hey, you got someone looking at an RV or a boat, you can hand them this information and join this community type of thing. So I think there's some value of getting those materials out to those retailers.
How many issues do you print of the Cincinnati magazine that Ohio, that Adventure Crew does?
I think we do 15,000, and then depend on the flip book version. but that's just for one market essentially. I know that Visit Cincy and Meet NKY, Julie said that they do collectively 150,000 a year. And a lot of that is mailed out but to people who request a copy by email. But that's, you know, a huge operation that they have, obviously. My gut says that you know, we could easily handle 15,000 with the understanding that we would do another version next year. Because I think one of the things that's for the communities that's attractive and another reason for them to buy ads is having the event listings in there. Like I can see Lawrenceburg buying an ad with the 5 key events that they have during the summer and fall. Same thing with Portsmouth even. So I think those events are really critical and make the downsize and make it dated come next spring. But if we do again an updated version the following year, as they do in Adams County, every year they do another one. And it gets easier every year because people love it. They buy ads again. And, you know,
Maybe eventually every county from Portsmouth on down to West Point will have a county magazine by them that promotes the river.
well, it'll promote their county,
Right.
which in turn, like Adams County and Brown is coming out this week, they promote their own communities, but obviously part of it is their assets along the river. But I think what's unique about us is obviously we go through all of them. So anyway, I think that we're at the end of our time. And so I think we have a next step, which is Wayne starting the process of identifying editorial content and sharing that with everybody and trying to narrow it down. We'll work we'll set up the meeting with Eric ASAP and just try to move this whole project forward. Make sense?
Right.
Tonight, I'll send everybody a recording of this meeting.
Excellent. And we will broach this tomorrow at the meeting at 10 o'clock with everybody with the notion that, hey, we're planning to do this project and each committee is going to be setting themselves up and organizing their own work. But part of their work will be participating ideally in some way with assisting with content to the extent that it makes sense for this publication. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. Great work. Bye-bye.